Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wilmette Institute WI Live. We are so excited to have a very special session tonight on the power of youth. So many times we try to think about how the world can change. We know that education is one of the key factors to that, and that the youth are empowered through their capacities to bring about that change. So, of course, our guest of honor, in addition to the youth who are with us tonight, is our very own Rainn Wilson, actor, comedian, humanitarian. Sometimes, you know, when you're really aware of something, you see it like a car or something everywhere. But once I became completely aware of Rainn's talents, his picture became known to me everywhere. I just saw him on a magazine at the supermarket, and when I was a couple years ago at driving to my parents, I would see him on 20th Century Fox all the time. So we're so happy to have him here with us tonight. Rainn Wilson, please join us.
Boom.
Welcome.
I like to make an entrance. Did you see how I did that? People are like, oh, is he there? Is he there? Boom. He's there. Hi, Chitra. Thank you for that fabulous introduction. And thanks to our special guests that we have today. And thank you all for joining. We've got about 100 of you on the line right now. And of course, many thousands more watch these videos once after we stream them live. So welcome to all of you. All right. So we're at the slideshow. So maybe we can just keep it on me, Nikki. I'm not sure. I'm just going to do a brief introduction to the Baha'i Faith.
Right.
Yeah. So folks, welcome. Please know that we're going to be addressing some questions that came in from previous weeks. There is a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. You can send in your questions today, and if we have time at the end, we'll answer some of those questions. And for those few of you who might not know kind of really anything about the Baha'i Faith, I think it warrants a little bit of time to talk about what the Baha'i Faith is, because we're going to be talking about the power of youth to change the world today, and we're going to be doing it from a Baha'i and spiritual perspective. But it's important to know a little bit about what we're talking about. So the Baha'i Faith is a worldwide religion with about 5 or 6 million members. It's the second most widespread religion in the world. So the numbers are small, but it's in every country you can possibly imagine. If you go to Somalia, or you go to Mongolia, or Peru, or Belarus, no matter where you go, there's always Baha'i communities. And Baha'is believe that there's only one God, and that this God, no matter what you call him or her or it, Gaia, the great spirit, the great mystery, Jehovah, that this God educates humanity by sending down specially appointed divine teachers or prophets from God that come down every couple hundred years or a couple thousand years. And that they're essentially all revealing God's central message, which is one of love and unity, and an important one of a spiritual maturation of the race of humanity on the planet. So you've heard a lot of these teachers' names before. You've heard, maybe some of you have heard about Zoroaster or Krishna, Abraham, certainly. But then you get a little more contemporary with the Buddha, and Moses and Jesus and Muhammad, that these teachers, yes, there are differences in their teachings in the terms that they were speaking to a specific pool of people at a specific period in history, but they are essentially, if you look at their message, they're always saying the same thing, underlying their differences. The essential message is the same. And it's actually a really fun game. You can find quotes from the Quran and from the Bhagavad Gita and from the Buddha, from the Bible, from the Baha'i Faith, and you could chop them up and put them in a hat and like play a game trying to guess who said what. And it's really fun because you don't know if something is Jesus or the Buddha. Or you're sure Jesus said that and it was the Buddha. You're sure Muhammad said that and it was Krishna. You're sure this is a Jewish Old Testament writing and it's from Baha'u'llah. So Baha'is believe that Baha'u'llah, who I just referenced, is the most recent of these divine teachers. He was Persian from Iran in the 19th century, mid-19th century, only 150, 160 years ago. And that Baha'u'llah brought a message of peace and love and unity for this day and age. So Baha'is believe in all of the prophets of all the world's religions, but we focus our main study and attention on the words and the teachings of Baha'u'llah because we believe they're the most relevant to humanity for this day and age. So a lot of his teachings make a great deal of sense. A lot of the social teachings are about elimination of racial prejudice, the fact that we're all one human family, the equality of women and men, the essential harmony of science and religion, the idea that we must seek the truth for ourselves, the independent investigation of truth, the elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty. There's many, many more teachings besides these, which you can investigate on your own. The Baha'i Faith has writings and teachings that are very mystical, private, prayers, meditations that are one kind of about one's personal relationship to the Creator. And there's also writings and teachings that are very much about kind of social justice and social action, trying to concretely make the world a better place. So there's a whole lot more to it than that. That's just the Baha'i Faith in a nutshell. But wanted to fill you guys in, those of you who didn't know. How was that, Chitra?
Wonderful. And
I'm getting faster at
it. It's always great to hear it. I think one of the questions or one of the comments you had made before was about social change needing a spiritual foundation. And so I don't remember your exact wording, but how do we actually make it happen? How does spirituality actually translate into changing the world? And one of those ways is building capacity spiritually, intellectually, on every level. And so that's why today we have invited some people to share that with us. But before that, I also wanted to share a little bit about what inspired us to invite the Esmailizadeh sisters and Luke Pereira with us for Rainn to interact with. And that is, there was a question, I believe, from one of the participants who asked about Rainn Wilson's son, Walter, and his involvement in junior youth groups and what that looks like, what kind of service they do. So I think that in the following slides that Rainn will share with us, we're going to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for bringing that up, Chitra. And that was the inspiration to bring some young Baha'is that are doing service work in the neighborhoods, grassroots, with youth, young adults, preteens, teens, to become kind of change agents, spiritual change agents in their communities. So I think I told this story before and I tell it a lot, but for me, it sums up so much. So I'm gonna tell it again. And it goes to the heart of what you brought up, Chitra, which is, if we're going to change the world spiritually, if we need to have if the world needs to shift on its spiritual axis in order to be changed, how does one go about doing that? How does a quote unquote religion or a group of people actuate that change? Do you just pray? Do you just think positive thoughts? Do you just try and be a better person? Blah, blah, blah. So I grew up a member of the Baha'i Faith, and I remember this thing happening with my dad that I thought was very funny and very appropriate. So because we believe in all the different religious faiths, when Christians would knock on our door, we would invite them in and we would discuss the Bible. And this particular group of Christians came into our house in the, I think, late 70s. And my dad said, they mentioned the kingdom of God on earth. And my dad said, well, what do you guys believe about the kingdom of God on earth? And they said, oh, well, we believe that in the end times, there will be thunder and lightning, and then the clouds will part and the skies will go dark and be roiling. And then descending, you'll hear the angels, and descending from the heaven, there will be a magnificent city of gold and silver. And on the city will be the angels blowing their trumpets, and Jesus will be there, and all the saved people will come up on the city, the kingdom of God on earth, and then that'll flow away, and then everyone else will be left behind. And they said, well, what do the Baha'is believe about the kingdom of God on earth? And my dad said, well, it's very similar in a lot of ways. So there'll be thunder and lightning, and the clouds will rumble, and the clouds will part, and the skies will be roiling. And then, but instead of a city coming down from the sky, there will be bags of concrete and cement and bricks and shovels and nails and a screwdriver. And then a note will float down from the sky, and it'll say, Kingdom of God on earth, do-it-yourself kit. So to me, that story really sums up what Baha'is are trying to do. And but before we get to our guests, I just wanted to, I was thinking, how do I set the scene for speakers to talk specifically about youth and junior youth activities and the power of harnessing young people to affect change spiritually in the world? How do I get there? And I was thinking, well, really for me, I get there as a Baha'i by looking at the meaning of life. This just plain and simple. Why are we here? Why are we alive? So I thought I'd start with something pretty simple, right? The meaning of life. Let's just start with the meaning of life.
Easy.
And that'll transition us, right? Easy peasy. That'll transition us to talking about the power of youth to change the world. So in the Baha'i writings, I could kind of break down the meaning of life into two paths. And it's referred to in some ways in the Baha'i Faith as our twofold moral purpose. And you learn about this twofold moral purpose as you get ready to work with young people. So I thought this would be appropriate. So let's look at some of the quotes here, Nikki. So there's a prayer that Baha'is say every day, an obligatory prayer. And this is just a part of it. This is a chunk of it. But Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith, says, I bear witness, O my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. So in this daily prayer that Baha'is say is the essence of why we're alive. So every single day, I did it today. I took a shower and then got dressed, and then I splashed a little water on my face, and I turned toward the Baha'i Holy Land in Israel, and I said this prayer, and every day I say it, I turn my heart there, and I know that, and I'm reminded that I have been created to know and worship God. So we could have a much longer discussion about what that means to know and worship God. I mean, we think at first blush like, oh, to know God, that means to what? Study holy writings. And to worship God means to pray and bow and do this. But if you start to really dig into what it means to know and worship God, it starts to get a lot more complicated. Baha'u'llah says, to know God is to know thyself. We're also told in the Baha'i Faith that work in the spirit of service is worship in the eyes of God. So you could kind of say, well, knowing yourself and being of service to others is to know and worship God. There's a lot of different ways to go with that. We don't have time to cover it right now because I want to get to our youth, but let's go on to the next quote. The purpose of the one true God exalted be his glory in revealing himself unto men, is to lay bare those gems that lie hidden within the mine of their true and inmost selves. The purpose of God in revealing himself is to lay bare those gems that lie hidden within the mine of us humans. It's me coarsely paraphrasing that quote. So I mentioned this phrase, a twofold moral purpose. It's kind of a complicated jumble of words. Twofold, there's the twofold path, two paths. Moral, we know, like to do the right thing, and our purpose. We have two purposes. This is one of these purposes we know, to know and worship God. So what does that mean? So what are the gems in us that need revealing? What are these gems? So this is part of our twofold purpose. My purpose, Rainn Wilson's purpose, is to try and get more gems out of the mine of the Rainn Wilson mine. So what are those gems? Well, they're the qualities of God. Again, Chitra, this bears saying, I'm not a clergy member. There's no clergy in the Baha'i Faith. So this is just my opinion, and there's probably way more intelligent and well deepened, seasoned, reasoned Baha'is in the participants here that would have a different point of view, but too bad. Get your own show. So this one part of our twofold moral purpose is to mine those gems. Those gems are the qualities of God. So to mine the gem of honesty, of compassion, of kindness, of love, of humility. I need to work on that one a little bit. To cultivate the qualities of God within ourselves, to make ourselves essentially more God-like. We can never be God, but we can be more God-like. It's like when the Christians say, what would Jesus do? You know, we're striving to be more like Jesus, striving to be more like the Buddha, striving to be more like Baha'u'llah. We'll probably never get to their sanctified station, but that's what we're trying. So let's move on. Now we're shifting over a little bit to the other part of our purpose. So one is to make myself a better person, and spirituality has tools to help make us better human beings. Whatever that means, better human beings. Again, more kind, more aware, more wise, more compassionate. The other path that we are all walking is in the next couple of quotes. Baha'u'llah says, think ye at all times of rendering some service to every member of the human race. Be ye sincerely kind, not in appearance only. Let him do some good to every person whose path he crosseth, and be of some benefit to him. Let him improve the character of each and all, and reorient the minds of men. So Baha'u'llah's call, again, the prophet, founder of the Baha'i Faith, Baha'u'llah, his call to us to render service to others, be sincere, to do good to others whose path we cross, be of benefit to others, to help improve the character of others, to reorient the minds of men. Let's continue. Reorient the minds of men. I love that one. Baha'u'llah had an eldest son, Abdul Baha. Baha'u'llah's name means the glory of God. Abdul Baha means the servant of glory. He was the center of the Baha'i Faith, the leader of the Baha'i Faith for many decades. And Baha'is believe he was exceptionally wise and had a incredible view into his father's teachings. So we often go to the writings of Abdul Baha. And the honor and distinction of the individual consists in this, that he, among all the world's multitudes, should become a source of social good. The honor and distinction of the individual is that he should be a source of social good. So again, this other side of the path. I'm making myself a better person. We covered that a little bit. The other side of the path. Was there another Abdul Baha quote? I thought there might have been. No.
No,
Back
this
the
is
other
the
way.
last one.
There's not another Abdul Baha quote? Just to make sure, and go back one more. Yeah, okay. Okay, no, that's cool. I had it in my mind differently, so it's totally fine. Thank you. And then finally, that we can go to the final Baha'u'llah quote. That all men, all humans, not just male men, have been created to carry forth an ever-advancing civilization. So this goes back to the introduction of the Baha'i Faith. This goes to the source of all of it. This idea that God, this all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing force, is sending down these divine teachers every 500 or 1,000 years or so to educate us, to help humanity develop spiritually. Because through developing ourselves spiritually, if I work on mining the gems of my virtues, of my godlike qualities within me, that will make me more capable of being of service to others and reorienting the minds of men. And that all of us have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. So we see civilization ever advancing technologically, right? Especially in the last 200 years. I mean, we kind of had stalled out technologically for centuries on centuries. And in the last 200 years, with the revelation of Baha'u'llah, the advent of Baha'u'llah and his teachings, Baha'is believe, there was this incredible influx of inventions and scientific discovery and movement forward of humanity technologically. But we have to advance our civilization spiritually as well. So no matter who you are, all 162 participants, someone's calling me. I'm just hung up on them. The
163.
163, woo! Welcome, whoever you are, 163rd person. That all of us have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization, ever-advancing in terms of spiritual wisdom and maturity as well, and social justice and economic justice and love and the spiritual building blocks of making the world a better place and unifying humanity. So this is what brings us to the work that Baha'is are doing with preteens and teens. These programs, the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program, work with youth. And because this often neglected population of 11, especially 11 to 15-year-olds, that we kind of put them out to pasture and give them a Nintendo Switch and say, good luck, get through puberty, we'll see you once you get to college, that this is where actually the change can start. And there is an incredible untapped capacity in these young people to affect change in themselves and in people around them. So the meaning of life, going back to it, to know and worship God, to make ourselves better people, to serve others, make ourselves better people so that we can serve others and carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. And in the Baha'i lexicon, that starts with youth and young people. So I wanted to introduce some neighbors from down the street, the Esmailizadeh sisters. I've known them for 13 or 14 years, and I could still only barely say their name, Esmailizadeh sisters from Calabasas, California. And this whole thing started with a conversation about my son, Walter. What has he been doing in his youth activities? Well, the Esmailizadeh sisters have been his teachers and mentors, in all of them in various capacities over the last many years. And he's been involved in programs that they have helped run. And they are super devoted servants to helping and empowering young people. So I wanted to hand the baton to them and talk about what Baha'is are doing to tap into the power of youth. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rainn. Thank you, Esmailizadeh sisters, for being here.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for having us on. We're so excited to be here, and hopefully this is helpful. Just by means of introduction, my name is Vadi. This is Nava here, Nika and Nura. And we're hoping to just share a bit of our experience, and in no way is this representative of everyone's experience or the truth of everything, but just our opinions and how we've interacted with some of these things that Chitra and Rainn, you've both so wonderfully introduced. Is my sound okay? I just want to make sure before I keep going. I'm good? Okay, great. So
yeah, and everyone can see them pretty well, Nikki, because we want to really focus on the sisters so that the audience can see their lovely faces.
Wow, yeah. So anyway, so just by means of, what we hope to talk about, I think really closely tied to what Rainn mentioned, the Baha'i Faith really is thinking about an ever-advancing civilization. And civilization is huge, and so maybe for now we start at the level of community and we think about what community building is and the role of the Institute process. And when I was thinking about this question, I was reminded of this quote from the Universal House of Justice, which is an elected and administrative Baha'i overseeing the affairs of the worldwide Baha'i community. And they are the supreme institution of the Baha'i community. And this quote reads, "When so much of society invites passivity and apathy, or worse still, encourages behavior harmful to oneself and others, a conspicuous contrast is offered by those who are enhancing the capacity of a population to cultivate and sustain a spiritually enriching pattern of community life." And I really wanted to reflect on this quote just for a moment, because I think that this idea of a population really standing up, actively participating and taking responsibility to cultivate and sustain a spiritually enriching pattern of life is at the heart of what community building is. It's that we care not only about the material progress, but also the spiritual progress of those around us. And this is also done at a population level. But this requires also a good amount of organization and some systematic action. And also spiritually enriching sounds a little bit abstract or obsolete. And so one of the ways that the Baha'i community has tried to make this a bit more concrete and bring it to life is through the Institute process, which builds on years of experience of Baha'is all around the world. And I'm going to pass it to Nava to talk more about that.
What did you say, the Institute process?
Yeah.
What is the Institute process? That sounds like a mysterious government organization.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
No. So I'm gonna try and talk a little bit more about what this Institute process is in my growing understanding of it. So at a very basic level, it starts with a series of books called the Rooty Books. And essentially these books are they're based off of the principles and the writings of the Baha'i Faith, and they're in no means there to indoctrinate, but rather for people, communities to come together, to invite their friends, to start to think about the material and spiritual well-beings of their communities. And it's intended for people to invite, to consult, brainstorm, and most importantly, in my opinion, to start thinking about how they can translate what they're talking about into action. And so a lot of the times, it helps us kind of formulate this question. At least for me, it was the first time that it helped me do this, formulate this question of what does my community need and how can I use my talents, abilities, resources to help with whatever the needs of my community are. And so these books are done all across the globe in like cities, villages, like islands, etc. And we're starting to see how there's like social action starting to spring from the different books that are taking place. Nika is going to talk a little bit more about the practical component in a second, so she'll go more in depth in that. But what's really helpful is that everyone is studying the same material, and it helps kind of build this vision of like a better world. And I think that this question of like how we build a better world is a really big one. And as youth, like it's a lot to chew. Like we have to think about, we don't know where to start. Like there's so much that we want to do, but usually like the easiest place to start is just thinking about like my city or my little locale. This way, like it doesn't become too overwhelming. It just is more digestible, in my opinion. And with that, we can also start to invite our friends to be a part of this conversation and to build the same vision as us, so that the more people that we invite, the more people there are actually helping us. So it doesn't get overwhelming on like one or two people. And we can see the success is really linked to how many people we invite to think about the world in this way. I think for me personally, I'll give it to Nika in a second, but thinking for me personally as a youth, there's a lot of focuses in life. Like we're thinking about school, we're thinking about our careers, we're thinking about global warming, this and that. And there's a lot going on. And for me, this institute process really helps kind of streamline all of that into a very coherent way of living, where service is like the center of everything I do. And there's these very clear, structured, organized paths to doing it. And I get to use my creativity in carrying out those different activities. But I can really turn this idea of how to have service at the center of everything I do into a reality.
So this is the building the kingdom of God on earth do-it-yourself kit. These are the ingredients to the do-it-yourself kit on the local grassroots level with young people.
Yeah.
Awesome analogy. Awesome analogy. Thank you, Nava.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Rooty Institute and the practical components of it, and kind of touching base on what Rainn was mentioning earlier of this twofold moral purpose, where while we study the Rooty books that have been given to us, we are taking these spiritual qualities and these gems of ourselves and letting ourselves grow. But then there's also a practical component where we're able to help society grow at another level at the same time. It's not one or the other, but they're going together. So there are several books. There's like more than 10 books that have been released, but a few of them, specifically 7 of them, come with a practical component attached to it. And so, for example, book 1 focuses on prayer and how we understand and study prayer. And we're supposed to, like, the practical component is to have a devotional gathering after. And book 3 is children classes. And book 5, we start junior youth spiritual empowerment program, which Luke, the other guest speaker, will touch more upon. And then book 7 really helps us reflect on the qualities and tools needed so that we can facilitate the rest of the population in the Rooty books that we have studied. So one thing that I was thinking about of how we're creating this ever-advancing civilization is the first quote found in book 1, which reads, "The betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds and through commendable and seemly conduct." And I was really reflecting on what does it mean to have pure and goodly deeds and commendable and seemly conduct. And another quote that is mentioned is, "Let deeds, not words, be your adorning." So if our deeds are truly pure and goodly and commendable and seemly, how would the world change and what would the positive impacts be that we see? And I was reflecting on my own experience with the Institute process. So just some context, like I started in the children classes and I invited my friends from my school to join these children classes with me. And after a few years, we progressed onto the junior youth spiritual empowerment program, where we were really able to create really close bonds of friendship and eventually move on to the Rooty Institute. And we went on to book 1 and then book 5 and studied these texts and really reflected on what does it mean to have pure and goodly deeds in our friendship and in our interactions with the rest of society that we interact with. And so I was reflecting on my experience, and I saw how culture changed in my friend group and in the school that we were going to, so that we see pure and goodly deeds being the forefront of our thought process and our actions. And it really created this positive environment for me to grow up in, And yeah, it was just something that I was reflecting on, like my own experience and how much it's touched my life and the friends that I've been able to walk this path of service with.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we're finding individuals to go through this institute process in a sprightly and intensified and focused manner is through camps. Camps being environments where youth and their friends can come together for an extended period of time and study the Rooty Institute and go through the books much faster. In this photo here, actually, Nika and I actually this summer served as facilitators at Bosch Baha'i School in Santa Cruz, where youth went through the first 5 books of the Rooty Institute in 5 weeks, and we saw the effects that the books and the material had on their lives coming back to their own neighborhoods and their own communities. Actually, this next Memorial Day weekend at the end of May, in SoCal, we're having our own institute camp, and I'm sure there's other camps going around all over the US and all over the world that if you'd like to become a part of, there are resources available that you can contact.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow, that's a lot of great information.
It really is. And this particular institute I had the pleasure to be at. This is a picture of Bosch Baha'i School in Santa Cruz, California, and the redwood trees are just amazing. And so was really being with all these youth. I have to say, truly, authentically, that when I witnessed these 2 sisters for 5 weeks facilitating a large number of youth and tutors and so forth, I was really blown away at, I mean, even a 50-year-old would start complaining about how much responsibility was put on these young, amazing ladies' shoulders. But with courage and grace, they carried it out, I think, better, honestly, than any adult I can imagine. And that is where you see the power of youth. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that really it takes that reorientation of our souls through education to put, as Nava said, to put service at the center of our lives, and then boom, watch it go. Another person I have had the bounty to witness this in is Luke Pereira, who will speak about the junior youth groups. Luke is like a family member now because he was the animator or facilitator of my daughter's junior youth group, and he's been so active with our local youth for the past 4 years. Sometimes he gets busy with his job as a commercial producer, but otherwise, all his heart and soul goes into service. So with great pleasure, I introduce Luke.
Thank you so much, Chitra. Really happy to be here. I just wanted to kind of like start right away by just sharing briefly my story and how I came to be, and have a junior youth group. I was born a Christian and still am a Christian, but I'm now a Baha'i. I found the faith in 2016. And shortly after, I realized to be a Baha'i was to serve as we're sharing. I went to a gathering to really look at the options for sharing or for service. And I saw that there was, something targeted to the 11 to 15-year-old age group, junior youth. And what really drew me to that age group was because I myself had a very rough middle school. That was when I had a lot of questions that I didn't get a lot of answers for. It was when I was getting in trouble in school. It was really just when, trouble with parents. And I felt like that, has given me some empathy. And I just think it's, as to what the sisters are saying, and like in terms of building this, like there's an option, and this is what I was drawn to. So I decided to become an animator or mentor for junior youth, and it's called animator because it's like bringing the life to that age group, bringing it about. So going into the training, I did one Rooty book before, and I had, I think, this kind of the general notion that I think a lot of people might have about junior youth training or working with middle schoolers, which is, it might be like a step-by-step how to discipline them if they get out of line sort of thing, how to, be, in control of the whole time. And 2/3 of the book are all about like, this is a blessed life, a period of life, like the period of youth, and specifically junior youth, 11 to 15. It's when you're learning, you're growing in consciousness. It's when you're really perceiving justice and you want to contribute to the world. And then it's also getting yourself ready to serve that age group. And then the last part is about getting you ready as an actual animator. So I just wanted to share one quote, and being cognizant of time, of course. Basically, the first half of this is sharing what, the kind of stereotypes of youth are. And then the second half is like, we're taking a different approach in the junior youth group, and which is that junior youth are altruistic. They have a sense of justice. They want to learn about the universe, and they want to contribute to the construction of a better world, brick by brick, as Rainn was saying. So that's really the framework of the junior youth group. And when I joined the junior youth group, service was the core of it. So we went into bake sales. We started writing letters to first responders, which would be a great service project, I think, now during the pandemic, to just write nice letters thanking first responders. We started studying these books, which are the junior youth books. This is the first one that you read, Breezes of Confirmation. And this is all about finding confirmation from God when you make an effort to better the world. So it stars two characters that want to be a nurse and a teacher, and it's just, if you make an effort, God will guide you in that path. And then there's sample activities and quotes that we learn and study along the way, and that's what we're studying. And then as we go, we're growing, in service. And in my own experience, just going right into it, it's literally like lockstep growth. As they grow, as we're literally learning things, I wasn't going into it saying this is civilization building. I was, really discovering with them. So we did some, canned food drives, making sandwiches for the homeless, beach cleanups. And with this service and studying these texts, we really got to, really grow and just kind of build our own sense of identity and really be there as a community, building community. I know this is the next book we were studying. I just kind of want to show the progression, but I'm not going to linger on it. But this is actually a book that deals with tribalism and warfare. And some people have, junior youth have read Glimmerings of Hope, and, it relates to like gang activity or any sort of clickiness, and realizing like, there's more to humanity than like dealing with that, even partisan politics, just breaking that boundary of what separates us from the other. So I just really wanted to highlight that of it, there was just kind of, this is over the course of like 3.5 years, but the adventures just kind of continued. And this is when, at this time, as they're growing, and this is on a camping trip where we're doing, creating rocks with virtues and stuff like that, and learning. And at this time, they're learning about things like, do we have free will? And, how to be an active participant in your life, how to be a protagonist and really have volition. And, eventually it just kind of grew to be, over the course of time, just a really large community. And it's just such a blessing. There's such a great support network. It really is, like Chitra said, we're all family. And now it's gotten to the point where the little ones, the ones that were like, 2 feet shorter than me, are now taller than me. And they either are animating or training to be animators for the, younger ones, their younger siblings and others. And it's just, you really see that process of like, okay, we've now built a little something, and now we're trying to build on that even more. And there's just that energy and excitement. And of course, that love. And, not everyone's Baha'i, and not all the participants are Baha'i. Of course, this is transcending that. This is, unity for everyone. I think
it's important to highlight that, Luke, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's super important to understand that this is not a program or a series of books in order to convert people to the Baha'i Faith. This is a series of books about young people's spiritual empowerment to make a change in themselves and in their world. And oftentimes I've seen there's Christians, agnostic, atheists, Muslims, and Baha'is all working side by side. We use a lot of the Baha'i teachings and writings as a source of inspiration, but there's not some kind of agenda around that. And I'm glad you brought that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, something growing up not in the faith, I try and be very, cognizant of, is just like, even avoiding, like, sometimes there's just jargon, or just really being open and trying to, everyone's welcome, always welcoming. So I think that's a really great point. And this is just, more examples of the youth now being older and leading their own activities. And to further that, this is now how we're doing it on Zoom with the Rooty Institute. Just wanted to give a quick example of that with the older ones, training to be either animators or children's class teachers, or just learning how to, be more of service in their life. Very flattering pictures. And then I did, to even further that point, this is another junior youth group we started in a housing project, and that no one really knows we're Baha'i. Everyone here is not of the Baha'i faith, either Christian, Buddhist, agnostic. And we've partnered with the Boys and Girls Club there, and it's just been a real blessing to actually see it fully from that side, where being involved in the program, people who want to participate and animate who aren't Baha'i, and then the participants are not Baha'i, because then you really see the community side. And for the families and everyone, they're very involved, they're very active, because they see just the fruits of what this is about in terms of just service. So that's all for that. They're called the Avocado Bears. That's why I have a little bear at the end. But thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Luke.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing, you guys. Thanks, Luke. Everyone give it up for the Esmailizadeh sisters and Luke. Thanks for participating. Wonderful. Well done. Very succinct. And we really wanted to share this stuff. Chitra and I wanted to share it with you, dear audience, because it's one thing to just say, oh, Baha'is work with youth and believe in youth empowerment. It's another thing to kind of take a peek behind the curtain and go, here's how you do that. There's books, there's service projects, there's tutors, there's, the older kids then mentoring the younger kids and ushering them forward. And, a cycle of service, putting service at the center. There's, like that Kingdom of God on Earth do-it-yourself kit, there's bricks, there's mortar, there's hammers, there's nails. There's a lot of specific tools towards doing this. And it's a lot of hard work. It's hard to corral, 6 to 15, 12 to 15-year-olds every week and get them focused and studying and working. It's fun too, but it's a difficult challenge. And I wanted to say, going back to Walter, and does Walter participate in this stuff? Our group, that Nava, Wave Nava, that Nava has led for many, many years, is we wanted to come up with a service project in our area. And we live in a upper middle class suburbs of Los Angeles. And, the kids had done beach cleanup, and they had done going to the old folks home, and they had done stuff with rescue animals and cleaning up a park and stuff like that. But we urged them to think deeper, and they came up with a service project that was about called Unplugged, because one of the big issues that people deal with in our area is kids, for lack of a better term, screen addiction or dependence on screens. The nonstop distraction that a screen provides, and also the alienation that screens can provide as well. So the kids did a series of presentations about screens and alternatives to using screens and phones and video games. and brought their friends and families of friends and people from school, and did these presentations, and it was fantastic. So it's getting to know your community and the needs specifically of your community and addressing those needs.
Thank you so much. This is such an important topic, because I feel like we're talking about raising human capacity and we're focusing on the power of the youth. But if they are running against a huge test of, screen addiction and all the distractions, it makes it so hard. Former Secretary General of the United Nations had said that war is not inevitable. It starts in the minds of people. And so it is in the minds of people that it can be undone, that peace can be fostered. And so, of course, the Baha'i community is not the only group, with a systematic plan of mentoring youth and what have you. But I think the unique aspect of it is having that twofold moral purpose of working on ourselves spiritually to really have, as Baha'u'llah says, a world embracing vision, and then having the will and the dedication that spiritual foundation gives to actually go out and persevere to make that difference. And so with that, I think we'll now turn to our dear registrar, Nikki Daniels, who will do a poll for us.
Yay, a poll, yay.
So you should see this on your screen. If you're using an iPad or a mobile phone, you might want to maximize your Zoom screen to see it. Questions are, how young are you? 11 to 14, 15, that is young enough to be in a junior youth group. Or 16 to 30, young enough to relate to junior youth. Or 30 to 60, young enough to wish the junior youth would relate to me more. That's where I fall. And lastly, 60 and over, young enough to have grandchildren who are junior youth. So everybody's voting now. We have so far about 58% voting. 62%. So we're going to cap it.
Is Rainn going to vote too?
Panelists can vote. So
okay.
I voted. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just checking.
Great. We've got
young enough to relate to junior youth, 16 to 30. That's me.
I know there are a couple 10-year-olds in here. There's some people in our transformative leadership group who are in here.
Yes, which is also another amazing program we will hopefully do a webinar about soon. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got 78%. Can we get 80? Think we can get 80? Come on, everybody. Vote. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to end the polling now. Mm-hmm. We've got 79%. All right, and now I'll share the results with you. So most people are in the 30 to 60 bracket, 35%. And then we have 28% over 60, but 25% are 16 to 30. And we actually have 12% who are young enough to be in a junior youth group. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
All right.
Welcome all ages. Thank you for being here. So I think at this point, we're going to open it up. Rainn will interact with the panelists in maybe answering some of the questions, or however you'd like to go forward.
Yeah, we have some questions that were sent in previously, so we could take a look at those. And then you guys, if you have questions, there's a little Q&A box in the bottom right-hand part of your screen, and you can send in questions there as well. The intro to the Baha'i Faith. Did you celebrate different religious traditions growing up? And if so, what made you turn to your new faith? We heard Luke's story, which is great. I'd love to hear more of your story, Luke. But for me, I grew up in a mostly Baha'i family, but so many relatives were Christian. So it would kind of double dip and have the best of both worlds. A lot of my grandparents would have Christmas trees and we'd have Christmas presents and stuff like that. And then we'd also have Baha'i Holy Day celebrations as well. So that's that. And then Chitra and Esmailizadeh. What about you, Nikki?
I grew up without any religion, actually. My parents never took me to church. So, and then I became a Christian. I was baptized twice into different churches. I was a young elder in a church when I was a teenager.
The baptism in the Baha'i Faith is a little different than in the Christian church. Baptism in the Baha'i Faith means hosting a potluck. Once you've hosted a potluck, then you're baptized. Sorry, Chitra, what was that?
I was just going to say, that's why you say, let us pray so beautifully. You were an elder in a church. Okay, now it all makes sense.
Great. What else? What's our next one? What do you find most challenging about practicing your faith? I'll give a stab at some of these a little bit, and then I'd love to hear from other panelists too. And just a reminder to people, if you have questions, put them down in the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen next to where, I don't know what your screen says, but you'll find it.
Lots of them now. Okay.
Oh, good. What do you find most challenging about practicing your faith? That's a great question. Baha'i perspectives on interfaith and interracial marriages. I'm going to go to that one. That one's easy. Baha'i Faith, very early on, a good 100+ years ago, Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, greatly encouraged interracial marriage and really wanted, because it brought the best of both cultures and views together and helped build bonds of solidarity and unity and love. So interracial marriage is something that's very prized and celebrated in the Baha'i Faith. And interfaith marriage, you know, my wife, when I married her, was not a Baha'i. She'd grown up both Jewish and Christian. Sometimes they would go to synagogue because the dad was Jewish, and sometimes they would go to Methodist church, or she'd go to church with her grandparents. And then she eventually became a Baha'i. But there's many, many Baha'is that are married to people of other faiths, and that is also greatly encouraged. Baha'is don't have to marry Baha'is. But what do I find most challenging about practicing my faith? I guess if I know, let's go back to the twofold moral path for me, my twofold moral purpose. That can be very daunting to know that I have two paths to walk on a daily basis, to try and cultivate those gems within me, those divine gems within me, those qualities of God, to try and be a better person. And at the same time, there's this kind of a give and take between faith and service, you know, between contemplation and action, between prayer and giving to others, knowing that I also have an obligation to make the world a better place and to try and help create an ever-advancing civilization. Sometimes it can feel daunting. It's like, I just want to take a day off and watch Tiger King, you know? But so it can be sometimes overwhelming, but at the same time, I'm really grateful for it, because I hope to make progress in this area as I move forward. But I'd love to hear from other folks. What about you, Esmailizadeh sisters? What do you find most challenging about practicing your faith? Or Luke? I'd love to hear from all of you.
I was going to say similarly to Rainn. I think the standards of the faith are very high. You know, like there's such high standards in the faith, and it can seem pretty daunting. But also remembering that this is like a purpose. It's like a progression, and just being very patient with yourself and others. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest struggle.
I think also as a youth, like when we're going to school and we're faced by a lot of materialism and like these positive and negative forces that we see in society. Like, I found it really hard sometimes to not get stuck by the negative forces that I was being impacted by, and to keep these standards that we're supposed to hold. So like not backbiting, or like not focusing on the material things, or like just things like that was particularly hard growing up.
I have to agree. I think upholding a strong rectitude of conduct amidst a wave of such negative social forces is definitely a challenge. But if it wasn't a challenge, what's the fun of that?
Yeah, I mean,
well, we have a lot of questions popping up, and I want to continue moving forward. I do want to hear from Luke in a little bit as well, but let's move on. Do we have any more questions, Nikki, on the slides, or should we move to?
Yes, one more question. I think it's an important one, so I'm going to share it now.
Great. How many Baha'is will it take to screw in a light bulb? Oh, excuse me, to change the world.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So this is a quote that we found that kind of helped with that. But Luke, go ahead. You want to read the quote and then give us your take on that question? It's a great question.
I'll read the quote first. Peace must first be established among individuals until it leadeth in the end to peace among nations. Wherefore, O ye Baha'is, strive ye with all your might to create, through the power of the word of God, genuine love, spiritual communion, and durable bonds among individuals. This is your task. Abdul Baha. I kind of was taking a shortcut on this question because it doesn't say how many Baha'is will it take to bring about world peace, but just change the world. And I think the Esmailizadeh sisters began their presentation with the betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds. So even the smallest deed from one individual Baha'i changes the world, or one individual person, but it says Baha'i, can change the world in a positive way, which I find very comforting in a sense, in terms of, challenges. We're saying it is just, get a bit better every day, and, that's your walk and your purpose, not to do big, huge, fix the whole world framework.
And by the way, this doesn't take Baha'is to change the world. It takes people to change the world. And it's not about who's Baha'i. Look at Greta Thunberg, she's 14, 15 years old when she started protesting her Swedish government policy, just going every Friday out with a sign. And she was outraged that the Swedish government was not doing as much to help with climate change. And she started a movement, worldwide movement with hundreds of millions of followers following in her lead. And she has the ear of all the CEOs and the leaders of government. So it can just take one person doing one pure deed that can affect tremendous change. Great. Should we, Chitra, do we want to go to some of the Q&As down here?
Yeah, there's a lot of wonderful ones. What made you go through this spiritual journey is one of them. Oh my gosh, question for Rainn. What is your interpretation on the whole story of Adam and Eve from a Baha'i point of view? That could be a whole one. Okay, I'm going to just keep jumping around. What else? I'm the only Baha'i in my large public high school. How can I share the Baha'i faith with the people I know? And then
let's do that one.
Okay.
So just hit answer live right there. You see that button?
There's so many. I'm just jumping around here. All right. Oh, that's just the question. There's no slide for it.
Right. So that's a good question. Esmailizadeh, what can someone do? What can Vienna Page do? Any advice?
Yes. I mean, I'm in high school right now as well. And for the longest time, I was the only Baha'i in my public high school. But I think the beauty of the Baha'i faith is that we get to engage our friends, that you don't need to be a Baha'i to partake in Baha'i activities or spread the Baha'i faith. In fact, when I had a junior youth group in middle school, I was too scared to invite any of my friends except for my best friend, so I didn't until she went and invited every one of my friends to this junior youth group. So it wasn't even me, it was my friend who's not a Baha'i who started our junior youth group. So I think the number one advice I give is to first to lead by example if you want to show those qualities and attributes, but also just to engage friends, and that's the best way to go about it.
And start with conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you don't always have to invite them right away, but start engaging in elevated conversation. Like, what's the importance of the period of youth, or how can we contribute to the betterment of the world? And then slowly start to invite them to things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Luke, did you want to say anything to that?
I think it's just a really beautiful question. I wanted to almost like lift the book I was talking about earlier in terms of just, I really believe that if you make an effort, and, God will confirm you in that. Like, if you reach out, it won't be like you lose your friends or something. I think it's just that kind of leap of faith, and just try and see what happens. I trust that it will work out for you. That's awesome that you're asking that.
Mm-hmm.
A question I like. If I could say this one from Carolyn, how to introduce moral growth into youth. She says it dives into a deep approach, knowing yourself, seeking independent truth, and so on. So I think that's an interesting one. People think a lot that youth don't have that capacity. And I think it was Luke that shared that Baha'is have a different view, that this is the perfect time, that they do have the capacity to understand and to, really start thinking and doing things from an early age.
I think it's hinted at here, one of the central teachings of the Baha'i Faith, the independent investigation of truth. And I think that may have meant something different 50 years ago or 100 years ago than it means now. So to investigate the truth independently 100 years ago meant maybe investigating the faith of your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents. Maybe it meant breaking out a little more from your tribe and seeking a larger truth. But nowadays, I think for young people, the independent investigation of truth means taking a hard, cold, but loving look at what society is telling us is true. For instance, society tells us over and over again that in order to be happy, we need to be more selfish. We need to do more things for ourselves. We need to acquire more things, buy things, distract ourselves with games and TV shows and movies. We need to have greater status and more friends, more likes on our social pages. And these things have been found time and time again in the field of positive psychology to not lead to happiness. And yet we're being sold this bill of goods. So the independent investigation of truth for my son, who's 15, is kind of like saying, hey, wait a second. I'm being told all these things. And yet, like partisan politics, that there's two roads and that people yell at each other and they spend billions of dollars on campaigns insulting one another, and that's the best political system in the world. And so there's all these things that society sells us as just like seemingly like, yeah, this is just true. It's just the way it is. But the independent investigation of truth is going, wait a second, I don't know that it needs to be that way. So there's a question here from anonymous attendee. Anonymous attendee has two questions. Maybe that's two anonymous attendees. We can get to both of them. What are the Baha'i views on LGBTQ plus community? can members of the LGBTQ plus community be Baha'i? So Baha'i Faith is open to everyone of all walks of life. It doesn't matter what, who you are, where you come from, what your gender preference is. That being said, there are writings in the Baha'i Faith about how sex is between a married man and a married woman. So but this does not in any way mean that other people are forbidden from joining. All are welcome. There isn't a judgment about anyone wanting to work with Baha'is or be a Baha'i. That might be and some difference with the moral laws. So there isn't a sense of kind of like sin and hell in the Baha'i Faith as there are in some other faiths around that. So we all are working on our spiritual journey. We are turning to Baha'u'llah for guidance, and we're doing our best with his teachings. And that's really what it's all about. But it also, this is a much longer conversation, and I know it's a very fraught and difficult conversation, and very complicated one as well in these modern times. But one of the things, and going back to the independent investigation of truth, is our contemporary society is very sexualized. Like your sexual identity is your main source of your identity to a lot of people. And sexuality is something that people lead with and present themselves with and talk about. And it's given a great deal of importance. And just one thing in the Baha'i Faith is just sexuality is just something that Baha'is don't put as much attention on as contemporary society does. We're spiritual beings. We're told in the Baha'i Faith the soul has no gender, and we're all in service to humanity, and that's really the most important thing. Chitra, do you want to add to that at all?
No, Rainn, I want to thank you so much for your beautiful analysis of both independent investigation of truth and the true nature of human beings. So beautifully said. I really, really appreciate your comments and all the panelists. I know that we're over the time now of the hour, and really look forward to continuing this discussion and just even digesting what we've been given today by all you amazing souls. Thank you so much to Rainn Wilson, to the Esmailizadeh sisters, to Luke, to Nika and the Wilmette Institute. Thank you so much to all our listeners as well. We have one or two more slides to just wrap up. For anyone who is interested to learn more about the Baha'i Faith or any of the junior youth or youth, with your parents' permission, if you're underage, you are welcome to go to Baha'i.us. And at the bottom of the homepage, you will find these particular boxes you can check and send in your information, and you will be contacted. So I think it says say hello, and you can go do that. The newsletter is also a really great way to stay in touch with what the Baha'i community is doing. Or you can email baha'i-info@usbnc.org. And again, you could visit baha'is.us and go to the Contact Us link. Additionally, I wanted to mention, there was a reference to the Transformative Leadership course the Wilmette Institute is doing. And we had our first one, it's just wrapping up now. So amazingly dynamic. It is so humbling to see the work of the youth, their art, their dynamism, their power of expression. And so it's for 11 to 17-year-olds, and the next one will be starting May 25th. It's 6 weeks long. I think it perfectly leads into also the Ruhi process as well. So they can go very well hand in hand. Also, Foundations for Relationships for 18 to 30-year-olds is really great. It's a 7-week course. This one has a nominal fee. The other one is for free. I think it's like $20 or something. And it's to basically explore relationships in general and for marriage. So wanted to plug in those two things and to say to please visit our website, wilmetinstitute.org, WI Live Free, for other webinars that are coming up on multiple issues that are super engaging. And I think Nikki has one more thing to share with us.
Also, please let us know where people can watch this video and where it gets posted. Someone had asked.
Okay, we have a YouTube channel. If you search for Wilmette Institute on YouTube, you'll find our channel. It's youtube.com/Wilmette Institute. And but you can just Google it. And we also have a Facebook page. You can like our Facebook page. We now have a new Instagram account. You can find us at Wilmette Institute. That's WILM. Well, oh, I think I misspelled it here. Oh my God. WilmetteInstitute.org.
It's a long day, and Nikki does everything. So
I'm gonna put it back up one more time. Hold on, because I fixed the thing. Oh, I'm still sharing my screen, aren't I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we had to see the last thing, so.
Yes, and that's the last one, wilmettinstitute.org. And if you go, you'll see WI Live Free on the right side at the top. You could go there, and I'll update it tonight, so we have all of this information on it.
Yeah, and if you register for the updates, then you'll know what's going on. And the next time Rainn will be with us will be next month. So this is our monthly series with Rainn Wilson. We're so grateful. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here tonight.
That'll be June 3rd.
June 3rd. Mark your
all
calendars.
are already registered for this, by the way, because it's a series. So you'll use the same link, and you should get a reminder a week before, a day before, and an hour before the next one.
Fantastic.
Tell your friends.
Okay,
thank you so much, you
everybody.
guys. Nikki, thank you.
Thank
Esmailizadeh, Chitra,
Yes.
as always. Luke,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks to our producer,
guys.
Boyd. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.